Welcome to the Talk Sox podcast. As always, I'm Alex, and I'm here with Adam and Maddie. What's up, guys?
Hey, how's it going?
Doing
Yes.
well. Lots of drama today.
Yes. I thought this would be a very run-of-the-mill Alex Bregman podcast. And then Rafael Devers.
Yeah, I mean, he had some things to say. And as we were talking off air, like trying to figure out if it's being overblown or not. I don't know.
I think that's a good place to start. For those of you who maybe aren't in the know, Devers was asked point blank about switching to DH, and he said no. They asked Cora to clarify those comments, and asked him, well, what about when he signed the extension? He was told he was the third baseman for the future. And Cora's response was, that was Heim. He's in St. Louis now.
And being the closest to St. Louis, you, of course, can confirm that.
Yes. Yeah. I haven't seen him there, but I know that he works for them.
I mean, the comment itself, I think, is like a little bit mundane. I don't really think that there's that much of like, I don't think you choose your positions this early in camp, really. And so, Devers is probably the third baseman until he's told that he's not the third baseman kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what you just go in assuming. I understand the comment from Alex Cora, but Alex Cora spent a lot of the winter when being asked about Bregman, talking of how Bregman always seemed more like a middle infielder to him who, had to play third because of Correa and Altuve and Houston. So the idea that like this is a very big controversy just doesn't, I mean, it sells newspapers, sure, but does it actually like move the needle for me as like something to watch in camp? I don't really think so.
Mm-hmm. Maddie, what's your take?
It seems like the legacy media was just stirring the pot at this press conference. Dan Shaughnessy made a comment about Devers' weight.
Good.
And
Good.
like you could tell he was annoyed.
Oh
Devers.
my gosh.
Yeah.
And it's just typical Shaughnessy behavior there.
Yeah. He falls in line with good old Pete Abe.
Yeah, and John Tomase too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. When I first saw it, I immediately was like, oh crap, here we go. Like, it's not Red Sox camp without something going on. But once I started to kind of dive into it and I watched it, one thing that really jumped out to me, and Adam and I were talking before you hopped on, Maddie, a lot of people on Twitter, X, Blue Sky, different, were saying that if you actually take the actual Spanish before it was translated out and take everything in context, they said that Rafi's completely cool. He was very honest, and he was really confused as to why the media has been trying to spin this. He said that up to this point, the team has hardly communicated a position switch and that he feels he's a third baseman and that he's training as if that's the case. And I think that's the exact right take to have on this at this point. It would be incredibly short-sighted to believe that the Red Sox didn't talk to Devers before they brought in Bregman. But Adam, like you said, Cora has been kind of pounding the drum of, I think that Bregman is a Gold Glove caliber second baseman. And currently that's the hole that needs to be filled. Jared Carrabis has essentially confirmed that had Bregman signed somewhere else, that an Arenado trade was happening within minutes of that signing being announced. And I think that if it was Arenado, then we're having a drastically different conversation here because there's only one place he can play at this point. But I think that Bregman is very much, at least for the 2025 season, a mostly second baseman.
I mean, Arenado did say he was willing to move to first base. So,
do you trade Casas to make that happen, though?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Cut your nose off to spite your face.
I heard some bizarre take today where well, I don't know if it was really a take, but I was listening to the Cespedes Family Barbecue podcast, and they said
Mm-hmm.
something about how you move Casas to DH, you move Devers to first, and Bregman to third, and that would be like the best case scenario. And I was like, in what world is Devers playing
Yeah,
first, where he's never really played like a best case scenario? Like Casas might not be the best first baseman, but he has played
he's
it.
tall,
You know, like
has
that's
range.
sure. Um, I mean, is there some reason to have pause here about Bregman playing second? Like a little bit. I mean, he is a Gold Glove third baseman, and the Red Sox have done this before, where they sign somebody to play a position that they do not currently play, and it turns out badly.
Yep.
Do I think that Bregman is Hanley Ramirez in left field? No, not really. I think that he's capable of being a decent second baseman.
Hmm.
But I think there's some reason to question that logic. But I mean, in light of getting a better second baseman, that is the hole that we needed to fill. And Bregman is a guy who, I mean, stature wise, athleticism wise, you can see him playing second. So why
Hmm.
not?
I feel like this is kind of all for naught at the moment too, because this is all assuming that Christian Campbell is going to force the issue, and I think that that's entirely possible. I think that camp is going to go well for him, and I think that he stands to break camp with the big league club. But there was talk of getting him work in the outfield. Um, if the Red Sox are truly not done adding to at least the pitching side of things, San Diego looks like they might be willing to deal Cease and Suarez, which would likely involve Wilyer Abreu. That could make room for Campbell in left field because you just shift everybody over. So, I mean, there's avenues to get everybody into the spots. I do think it's weird to sign a Gold Glove third baseman to play second, but he's built like a second baseman. He played second base before he was in the majors. Um, it was reported over the last couple days that Pedroia was heavily involved in recruiting him, and so I think that there will probably be some conversations and some work done there too. Um, I think the question that I've only heard a couple people talk about up to this point is kind of where does this leave Vaughn Grissom?
Yeah.
If you're bringing in Bregman to play second and you have Campbell as the heir apparent, like they talked about getting Grissom work in the outfield, but there's only 3 outfield spots.
Yeah, I think that there's a good chance that this does leave Grissom sort of in no man's land. But I think that also is assuming that Story is healthy,
Yeah.
which is also kind of a big question mark.
Yep.
So I mean, if Story stays healthy for the entire season, then I think there are some issues here. Grissom, Campbell wise, but uh, that hasn't been the case so
No.
far. That isn't my lived experience with dealing with Trevor Story. So in that case, I'm we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But it's not. I mean, it couldn't have been a great feeling for Vaughn Grissom when the trade came down.
Yeah. If you're traded for somebody like Chris Sale, who even coming off a bad year with the trade, the year before the trade, like, yeah, he won the Cy Young and everything. But like, you're like, all right, they traded, World Series champion, their ace for me. And now it's like, well, I guess you're going to start out in AAA, and we'll see what happens, buddy. Like,
I think I mean, I know you said that you think that Campbell is going to break camp with the big club, but I do sort of wonder if it's possible that he doesn't because of Grissom. Like, if it really is going to all come down to the competition in spring training, or if they just are going to feel like they need to give Grissom a little bit of major league time and give Campbell more regular playing time.
I think breaking camp without at least one of Campbell or Anthony is a mistake. Because I think both of them easily are Rookie of the Year contenders. And with the new CBA and the perks that come with winning Rookie of the Year, when you have two of them in your farm system, because at this point, Marcelo Myers effectively blocked for the season, and he hasn't seen a pitch of AAA baseball yet. So I think that another year in AAA for him is great, which will give you a hopefully Rookie of the Year contender going into next season. But I think that right now you need to strike while the iron's hot. And if you break camp without really both of, but at least one of Campbell or Anthony, you've missed a giant opportunity.
I mean, is there a way to break with one of them without making a trade here? Or, I guess the only real way I see it is if there's an injury, because there's no room for
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, that's the biggest issue is I think you've got to trade Willie or you've got to find a way to get Yoshida off the roster. Grissom to AAA. I don't see them DFAing Ref Snyder. Romy Gonzalez, I think, is expendable at that point if you're breaking camp with Campbell. And I like Romy. I think that there should be trade talks around David Hamilton. I think that other teams would pay an okay amount for him solely because of the speed.
Yeah.
But I assume we haven't heard anything to that effect, so I assume that that's not happening. But I think that if Campbell forces Cora and Craig and the front office's hand, Romy, sorry, it was fun last year, but remember you were cut by the White Sox 2 years ago.
Yeah, I feel like David Hamilton is a guy who hasn't been talked about enough with this whole situation because
the hand injury kind of put him out of everybody's mind.
Yeah, it did, ending the season injured. But at the end of last season, I wrote about how there were three guys that might get Rookie of the Year votes for the Red Sox, and one of them was Hamilton, and just purely based on his steal numbers and just he was. I think people do forget how good he was for most of the season.
It started rough. But he I mean, once he figured it out, you felt confident when he stepped to the plate.
Yeah, and I mean,
and that's not something you could say about Rafaela through 90% of the season last year,
Yeah, I mean, the reason that Rafaela was really in the conversation of people saying he might get Rookie of the Year votes was because everyone was like, well, he is a Gold Glove center fielder caliber player playing the infield, and doing a good job at it, or at least passable job at it,
yeah,
thing. And so people were like, that counts for something, and I was like, does it? He's so streaky that I'm not sure if it really does count for that much.
Yeah.
But in my mind, Hamilton was a better player than Rafaela, at least. Yeah,
I agree with that.
So the idea of of Hamilton being sort of out in the cold in this talk, along with Grissom, is sort of too bad for him, I think. But do you think that he is a start the season in AAA guy? Is he a we're going to move him kind of guy? What does happen with Hamilton?
Maddie, you got some thoughts?
Hamilton is pretty expendable, like you guys said. I think, yeah, he could start the season in AAA along with Vaughn Grissom, because Grissom only has just over a year of Major League service time, so there's no incentive to keep him up in the majors to shorten his salary with arbitration.
Yeah.
I would like this Hamilton's speed is the thing that makes me think that they would try to find a spot for him on the major league roster. He once he kind of figured defense out, he was a decent second baseman. He's a terrible shortstop. But some of the talk is that if/when Story goes down, Grissom may slide in to the shortstop role, which I know is where he played in Atlanta, but he seems pretty short-armed for a shortstop too. I think that I would rather try Marcelo at that point, just get him up and see what happens. But I don't know if there is space for David Hamilton on the roster. And I don't think that you're getting like a blue chip prospect back for him by any means. But, I think that if you were to send him as part of the deal to the Padres, that makes a trade for Cease or Suarez a little more stomachable. And it likely helps to unclog both the infield and the outfield, because I think that a trade to the Padres for somebody of that caliber has to start with Willier. I think that he's going to be part of that deal. And realistically, I would rather see Rafaela shift to right field and put Duran in center, because you really at Fenway Park need to have two center fielders to be able to effectively manage that space. So it's Ellsbury and Victorino 2.0,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's the best foot forward defensively, and probably your best foot forward offensively if that opens it up for Campbell or Anthony or Grissom to play left field.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if Story goes down, I would rather see Bregman try second than I think trying Grissom at shortstop, or have Bregman try shortstop.
Yeah.
Then try, Grissom.
Grissom's long, but he just doesn't have the athleticism to play short.
Yeah. And I mean, and Bregman's been playing, third, so he has, he's not like a strong armed third baseman, but he has the throwing arm to at least,
Devers has played shortstop in the shift.
That's true. Yeah.
Gold Glove caliber.
I mean, so it's interesting that the Red Sox went this route with signing a player, because I think so much of what we've been talking about is the idea that the Red Sox just have this like logjam of players that need a space and don't currently have a space, and to go and sign Bregman just sort of adds to that logjam. And without a corresponding trade, it feels like, well, one, I think all players now have their trade value decreased because every team knows that the Red Sox need to get somebody, but the idea that, now they have this very full infield along with a very full outfield is sort of like, I don't know. I was interested because I thought the entire offseason, I think our very first podcast we did together, I said that it seemed like the Red Sox had to add through trade. And I mean, they did it with Garrett Crochet, but it's sort of, we've added a lot more through signing than I thought we would. And so,
absolutely. Yeah.
It's very crowded now.
It's a good issue to have too much talent rather than trying to figure out who's going to fit where.
Yeah, I mean, especially, last year when Story went down and it was just sort of like a never-ending revolving door for the entire middle infield. I think that it's better now. I think, there still has the possibility of being a revolving door, but it's a revolving door of highly touted prospects rather than, just Romy Gonzalez playing second erroneously, or whatever.
He played first for a while.
Yeah, him as a first baseman, I think, makes a lot more sense than him as a second baseman.
He's the size of a second baseman. We'll give him that.
Okay, yes.
He's a small dude.
But yeah, it's the depth is important, but it's also it's like I don't know, maybe this is how the Dodgers always feel. Maybe the Dodgers are just like, oh, it's an embarrassment of riches, but like
We'll play Mookie at short.
Yeah. I know. So I don't know. But when I saw it come down, I was surprised because I think that we had even talked last podcast about how we all kind of assumed that Bregman wasn't coming anymore. And then the fact that it did actually happen is just it's interesting. It's nice, I guess. But yeah, interesting.
It's the first time in a while that I felt that Fenway Sports Group cares about the Red Sox again. It really seemed like the sale extension, the Story deal, even the Evaldi extension to a lesser degree, and the Yoshida contract all kind of put a little bit of fear in them to spend money. And this could be a $40 million 1-year deal if he comes here and rakes. But I'm okay with that because while it's an overpay, I think it's a necessary overpay. And I've written and we've talked about, like, I was not a Bregman guy. I thought that if you were going to shore up third base, it had to be through Arenado. But that was when I was operating under the assumption that would be a 4 to 6 year deal, and more than likely a 5 or 6 year deal, and a 3-year deal with opt-outs, I think is perfect. And Maddie, like you said, like, I would rather have the problem of having too many good players to play different positions than be worried about Romy Gonzalez and David Hamilton turning double plays up the middle.
Yeah, I think the length of the deal is maybe something we should talk about because, yeah, I mean, $40 million a year for 3 years is sort of unexpected.
7th highest paid player in the league. He's tied with Judge.
Yeah, I mean, AAV wise, this is the biggest contract the Red Sox have ever signed a player to, but like it's. The length of the deal, it's sort of I think it really has the chance to be a contract that teams are very excited. I think a lot of teams are going to be excited that this deal went through and that Bregman accepted it, because I think this is what a lot of people have been wanting for a long time, is they want the ability to sign good to great players to short, high AAV contracts with deferred monies to lower the present day value of the contracts. I don't think that if Bregman, wanted to be signed through 2030, 2032, whatever, like, I think, the Red Sox were not willing to do that.
He'd have signed with the Tigers.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a 6-year, $171.5 million deal.
Yeah, and so I think that the Red Sox pulled this off, that Bregman was willing to accept it. I think that a lot of owners are going to be hoping that this is a
shift from the Ohtani Soto.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
because I don't.
One thing.
The Red Sox aren't going to. The Red Sox don't have the stomach, it seems, to sign guys to long-term deals.
Did you see Boris's comments after the signing?
No, what he said?
He said that, contrary to what's been reported since then, that the Red Sox were very in on Juan Soto, and that those negotiations led him to believe that John Henry cared about spending money again. He said that as soon as Soto signed with the Mets, they immediately pivoted to Bregman. And this is me at this point. This isn't a Boris thing, but like, I really think that we need to give Breslow his flowers for this, because he read the market 100% correctly. I think that it was kind of like hey, Boston offers you literally everything that you want to win in 25, 26, and 27. It's a good group at the majors. We have a young core coming up to support that. We have bolstered our pitching staff. We have a manager that you love from your time in Houston. We have a ballpark that is tailor made for your swing. Go sign with Detroit for 6 years and see how it works out. Or come here for 3 years, boost the numbers, hit free agency again, and then see what happens then, where you can go be that veteran leader somewhere else if that's what you need. I think that Bregman wanted to play nowhere else but Boston. And Craig being able to wait it out and not caving like, okay, here's 6 years, come on. It was genius. It was incredibly intelligent. And Pivetta signing with the Padres probably had a lot to do with that. You're okay to give up the comp pick when you get a comp pick back.
I think it's really
90
telling.
minutes later.
Yeah. How those two dominoes fell really quickly with Pivetta signing with the Padres and then Bregman. Like,
Yeah,
like you said, Alex, 90 minutes later.
Yeah.
Yeah, in our Slack, I saw Alex say like emergency pod, and when I looked at MLB trade rumors, the first thing on there that I saw was Pivetta. And I was like, Pivetta signing with the Padres?
Yes, he got a 4-year deal.
And then I refreshed it, and I saw the Bregman thing, and I was like, oh, okay. I see what's going on now. But yeah, I mean, the Pivetta thing, I think, definitely helped, and
good for him.
Yeah, I was going to say that's an interesting one too, because
I think that also makes the Cease trade far more likely. So maybe Pivetta can get us a couple wins.
I mean, that would be really funny if we just switched pitchers with them. But Cease over Pivetta, I think I would take any day. So.
Yeah. Even without a guarantee, he resigns next year.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Because at this point, I mean, also, there's no guarantee that we have Bregman next year either. So, bring Cease and Bregman for 1 year and see what they can do.
Or Crochet after the next 2.
Well, I mean, I think everyone is hoping that Crochet.
Yeah, but I didn't love those comments. Where he was like, I want to see and see if I can get that money. And that's not what he said. That's not his quote, but that's what it felt like.
It seemed more like hey, let's bring this to the table now.
That's my hope.
Comment.
Yeah. Would you be willing to pay him like an ace? I know that's not a word that we throw around a lot on Talk Sox, but would you be willing to go ahead and do that?
It's not my money.
That's a good point. If you were John Henry, would you be willing to go ahead and do that, I guess?
I mean, I'd be willing to spend a lot more money than John Henry currently spends, honestly. So, I mean, yes.
We'd have Juan Soto if I had John Henry's money.
Exactly.
Well, and Ohtani, for that matter.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think that you don't trade like Kyle Teal to get, a year or 2 of Crochet. I think you need, no matter what you think of Teal, if you think that Teal's going to be, a great, all-star caliber catcher or not, he is going to be a starting catcher in this league in all likelihood.
Probably this season.
Yeah, well, I mean, but I mean, he probably would have been for the Red Sox too at some point. And so, I mean, I don't think you trade that guy and then are just content with having Crochet for a year or 2. I think you need to sign him to a deal. And if it means that you need to pay him like an ace, I mean, maybe you do it. How long do you pay him for? I think that's another thing,
I don't think he'd take anything over 5 or 6 years. That would put him re-entering free agency in his age 30, 31 season, and I think that's what he's looking for.
And I think that that's like what the Red Sox probably would want anyways.
Yeah, especially with like the Fried deal, the Burns deal. Like if he can if he can maintain for the next 5 years, re-enter free agency as a 30-year-old after posting those kind of numbers, he's going to get paid again.
Yeah, and he'll get paid till the end of his career, essentially, probably at that point. But
I would really like to get a deal done before the season starts.
I understand that. I have been hearing a lot about how owners are sort of wondering what's going to happen with the new CBA and with the way that, however, television money, how all of that stuff is coming down. So, that might be the only thing that really hampers it. Otherwise, I would say, we need to get it done. But I could see John Henry and ownership thinking like, well, we're
Is
not
that 2027 when the CBA expires?
Yes. So, which means that they're going to have to start talking about it,
now,
probably, now, or, at the latest next off season is going to be when it starts. So, I don't know.
They institute a Dodgers rule.
Well, I mean, I think that's what, all owners who aren't the Dodgers and Mets ownership is hoping for, or
that's never going to fly. Never
pushing for. I have no idea what kind of concessions you could possibly make to the players' union to get them to agree to something like that. But I think that there is, a chance that the middle ends up being, bad for the players. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see baseball ever having a salary cap, but and I'll go on record. I talk about this with my buddies all the time. Like, I don't have a problem with what the Dodgers are doing.
Yeah.
If you can spend that money, spend it, and if that means that players are more likely to come to your team to win championships, it's money well spent. I wish that John Henry felt that way. Every fan, and I think I said this on the last podcast, you're not mad at the Dodgers. You're mad at your team for not being the Dodgers. And you could say, yeah, they play in LA and their stadium's gorgeous. And, the Brewers don't have that. But if the Brewers were willing to spend, the Brewers would have that.
The thing that I think also, like, it's a small stadium though. It's not like they're selling out every game in like Yankee Stadium or something. So they have like this, massive revenue stream coming in all the time from gates. I mean, it's a small stadium. It's like just barely over Fenway Park size. So it's not like this is, they're making their money that way. They're just willing to spend money. They don't have a, development deal around their ballpark either.
Right.
The ballpark in LA is parking lots as far as the eye can see around it. There is no like luxury apartments that they've
It's like on a hill, isn't it? Like,
yeah, it's in the middle.
It's in a ravine.
Yes, that's right.
Of.
Yes.
Yeah, so you go down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, Dodger Stadium seats 56,000 people, according to Google.
Yeah.
So they're bigger than Fenway.
Yeah, I think I remember through the World Series they said something like they had 60,000 in at one point.
It's pretty impressive.
And that's people that are paying hundreds of dollars for tickets where you can't actually see the game. You're watching it on a screen.
I mean, I've been to Dodger Stadium a couple of times, and there's not really a bad seat in the house. Maybe that's why I thought it was closer to Fenway's size, because it's not like there's like a triple deck of outfield seating or anything. It's like it all feels very cozy. But yeah, it is a beautiful stadium, to your point, but I don't think that stadium beauty is why players are going there.
No, because otherwise people would line up to play for the Rockies and the Pirates.
Yeah. and the Orioles. Yeah, I don't think that that's it. And honestly, I mean, probably
Can
the
we
Red
talk
Sox.
about how the Orioles have done nothing?
The Orioles.
This is nuts.
It is so. I mean, that when you were just talking about the Cease trade, the thing that I had heard is like, well, maybe the Orioles are a perfect fit for Cease, and I was like, well, that makes sense because I mean,
It would
honestly,
require them doing something.
yeah,
And I
because
don't think they want to.
haven't done anything, and
They signed Charlie Morton.
who
40.
Yeah, who won? I really did not expect to ever not play for the Braves again. It seems like he was either going to retire or keep playing for the Braves. So I don't know how they lured him out of Georgia, but I mean, like, good for them. I mean, is he going to be as good as Corbin Burns was last year? No. And so, like, I don't know what the Orioles are doing. If the Orioles are trying to compete this year, like, I don't really understand it.
They've got this new ownership group that like touted how much money they were willing to spend, and going into the offseason it was like, man, watch out, the Orioles might get Burns and maybe in on the Soto sweepstakes. And now all of a sudden they've signed Morton and a Japanese pitcher, and I think that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, their offense didn't fall apart, but it slowed down considerably in the second half of the season. Burns was their only guy. Not that he's going to be healthy for much of the season, but John Means is gone. When you look at the Yankees, and yes, they lost Soto, but they have made some additions, and the Devin Williams pickup I think is probably like the sleeper best move of the entire offseason. I wanted the Sox to be in on Williams so badly. The Red Sox have gotten exponentially better through Bregman and Crochet. The Rays have made some on the margins moves, but they're going to play in a minor league park, so they'll score runs when it's not raining. And the Orioles have sat on their hands and have maybe played them, not done anything their way into last place in the AL East if the Rays are any sort of competitive.
I mean, I think in a lot of ways the Orioles and Red Sox were like very parallel organizations coming into the off season, in the way that they both have a lot of young talent and are
very much like, look at the kids, here's what we're going to do, kind of
the young talent to come through to really, like, if Jackson Holiday plays up to his prospect ranking from like 2 or 3 years ago, like, then sure, they're going to be a dangerous team. And so I could have seen both of, like, the Red Sox and the Orioles kind of running parallel, but then the Red Sox have just made so many moves that have moved them up in the pecking order of not just the AL East, but the AL in general. And the Orioles just, like, as soon as Burns signed somewhere else, and it was like and was the big corresponding move, it's just sort of like, and anything else?
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe they're waiting for the trade deadline. They're hoping that they can kind of hang around 500 ball until then and push all the chips in and go from there. But I don't know. There was a couple comments on the last episode about, because I said that I could see the Sox winning the East in the last episode, and that was pre-Bregman, and I believe it even more now.
Yeah.
And the Yankees don't scare me.
You didn't mention Paul Goldschmidt to the Yankees at all.
Yes.
In the last episode, that big signing for the Yankees.
Yes. So much like Nolan Arenado, I have watched Paul Goldschmidt over the years playing in St. Louis. I would rather have Albert Pujols on my team right now.
I mean,
I'm sure Paul's a great guy. Man, and it came around a little bit at the end of last season, but he's a shell of himself, and this, for all intents and purposes, should be his last season in the majors.
yeah, I mean, the more I see projections and the more that like the projections still all say that the Yankees are the best team in the AL.
I just don't see it.
Yeah, I feel either it says something about the AL talent wise in general. I do think that the talent is more dispersed in the AL than it is in the NL. The
Mhm.
NL, still feels like it has a couple of super teams and then just, everybody else.
You hope the Diamondbacks get hot and get lucky.
Yeah, exactly. Diamondbacks are like one of those teams that, now with Corbin Burns.
Which now they're one of
They,
the teams you talk about. But
yeah, exactly. But
2 years ago they weren't.
being in the West is sort of, the big curse.
Yeah.
But in the AL, it's sort of like there is no, Soto Judge anymore, which was sort of like, the big thing last year. It's sort of
Mhm.
like maybe this year it's Bregman Devers, I don't know. Is it going to be Holiday Henderson? I mean, there's a chance, but it doesn't feel the same way that the Dodgers or the Mets,
No.
you know. But as we were talking about before we started recording, the Coda rankings, which we talked about in the last episode, who really don't like the Sox.
Still don't like the Sox.
Still don't like the Sox.
Spoiler alert.
But on Fangraphs right now, the projected standings have in the AL, it's supposed to be the Yankees with the best record, and then they have the Red Sox and Rangers tied for the second best record, which again is another kind of the Rangers, pre-spent and spent quite a bit trying to kind of be a Mets-esque kind of team, signing Seager and Simeon and signing DeGrom. And Fangraphs has DeGrom as their highest WAR pitcher, which, I mean, I would love it if I got to see a Jacob DeGrom start living here in Texas, but it hasn't happened yet. So, we'll see what happens. But I think that, the AL has teams that have spent money, and it hasn't always been the smartest money.
Yeah.
It hasn't worked out quite as well as it has for the Dodgers. Although, I mean, the Rangers, they won a World Series, so I'm sure they're not complaining about the money they spent, but certainly the money that they were spending on, DeGrom and, trading for Scherzer and whatever, like that didn't help really help them win the World Series. They sort of won in spite of those things.
Yeah, that was such a wild time in baseball. the Scherzer, Verlander stuff, like from the Mets.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the Mets' first big foray into spending, and it was, bad.
And lucky for their fans that didn't scare Cohen away from doing that type of stuff.
Well, it scared Cohen
and good
away.
on him. Good on him for admitting his mistake.
Yeah, last season he didn't spend the same, and instead they actually made the playoffs. So that was sort of like, oh wait, I didn't spend and we made the playoffs. Well, what about if I spend $750,000 on a player now? Let's see what happens, kind of thing. But the AL just doesn't have teams like that. And so I think that the idea that the Yankees I just don't see that they've gotten quote unquote better. Bellinger and Goldschmidt are players that maybe half a decade ago you would have been like, wow, I can't believe those guys are going to be playing in the AL East. Like, that's crazy. But do either one of them now scare me? Not in particularly, and their pitching staff, I mean, you're counting on, obviously Garrett Cole's Garrett Cole. He's going to be a, above average pitcher, but
Fried will be good.
Yeah, Fried will be good. I mean, I've kind of been on the fence about Max Fried in general, having seen him a little bit in Atlanta. I don't know. Do you think that where do you think he fits in their rotation? Is he going
He's
to
their number 2.
But is this kind of like Carlos Rodon number 2, where it's like, well, this is, they spent a lot of money on him. He is definitely going to be their number 2 pitcher, and then he just
I think based on talent, he's pretty clearly their number 2. I don't think that Luis Gil. I think he's good. I don't think that he's what everybody else in New York thinks he is. They're actively still trying to trade Marcus Stroman. That was a match made in hell from the day that happened.
Yeah, so funny that, like, I remember when Marcus Stroman got traded to the Mets, and there was like a big thing about how the Blue Jays had said that he got traded to New York, or told him that he got traded to New York, and then when he found out it was the Mets and not the Yankees, he freaked out.
Yeah.
And kind of thing. And I feel like he spent all this time wanting to be a Yankee, and then it's just going as poorly as humanly possible for him. And you're like, man, Marcus, you would much rather be on the Mets, right?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, the Yankees went to the World Series last year, but it definitely didn't have anything to do with Stroman.
No, I mean, they left him off one of the rosters, and then he never pitched when they put him on.
Yeah, so I mean, he really had a Drew Pomerantz role in the Yankees World Series kind of thing. But he isn't a terrible pitcher. Like, you feel like if he got traded somewhere, like, he would make someone starting rotation. So I actually feel kind of bad for him. Like, you get everything you ever wanted, and then it's like, oh wait, this was a terrible idea.
Yeah.
And so, wherever he goes next, like, they're going to look at him as damaged goods too. So I don't know what the Yankees think they're going to get from trading him, but it's not going to be a lot. So
no, and I think that he's undeservedly gotten a reputation as an issue in the clubhouse. Because he's loud. He's going to tell you what he thinks about whatever the situation going on is, and some people, they're heralded for that, and some people are not. And so I think that Stroman's kind of the one who is not. And I don't know, I just kind of watching him interact with like media and stuff over the years. He seems very wishy-washy. And I don't know if like what we see is like who he actually is, or if he's just putting on a persona.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you'll ever know that unless you're in a clubhouse with him. And I don't think there's many teams that are going to be willing to take that risk, at least this year, to put him in their clubhouse.
Yeah.
Unless they're giving up a flyer on a couple high A prospects,
Right. I mean, Stroman to the Orioles, where would that put the Orioles? Are you scared of them then?
Out in the same place.
Yeah. Yeah, it's essentially like maybe a little bit better than signing Charlie Warren. Kind of. It scares you maybe just a little bit more. Yeah, it was a very precipitous fall from grace for Stroman, and I feel bad because I think that as like an American black player, I think that he got a lot of unnecessary criticism from old
Yes.
white baseball guys.
Hmm.
Was it when he went to the Mets that someone made some comment about like his do rag or something that he
Yeah.
was with, and like Sherman had to be like, I it's not like I'm being a gangster or something. Like this is like a hair issue that I wear
Right.
anymore. Like it's not, like it's a cultural thing, dude. Like get over it kind of thing. So
Yeah.
like I feel like that has partially been part of the persona that's been pushed on him is that old white guys just don't get him. And
Yep.
so like, that's sort of been like, well, he's sort of a bad seed. It's like, oh, is he? Or is he
And
just
who owns teams? Old white guys.
exactly? Exactly. That's gonna be, so I'm sure that is going to be the issue, but I feel bad for him. I always thought that he had with so much talk about Bregman, like the attitude that Bregman brings with him. It was one of those attitudes that I think everyone hated when he was on the Astros,
Mhm.
and now Red Sox media is like, this is exactly what we needed here, kind of thing. I think that Stroman had a lot of the same kind of attitude that like rubbed
Mhm.
a lot of people on other teams the wrong way. But I can see how in a clubhouse it might actually play up pretty well,
Yeah.
to have that kind of like bulldog attitude.
Yeah, I think that there's some hope that bringing Bregman in is going to fill the Pedroia type role
Yeah. Oh,
in the
I mean,
clubhouse, and I
every
don't know
time
if it's
Lou
possible
Maloney
to fill
opens his
that,
mouth about it,
but
it's
yeah,
Gloria.
I think I don't know if they're like I don't know if you can fill that role. Like, yeah, you can be that type of leader, but I don't know if like for as close to Pedroia as Bregman is, I don't know if that even plays with the Casas of the world. Like I don't know if Tristan Casas and Dustin Pedroia would have gotten along in the same clubhouse. Um, and so if it's still that, and I'm not saying that this will be Bregman, but Casas' first year up, there was the veteran players that had a problem with the way that he conducted himself.
Mhm.
What if Bregman develops a problem with Tristan Casas sunning himself, like, or meditating, or doing a number of things? Like, the Sox have shown a willingness to at least engage in conversations about Tristan Casas. Do those all of a sudden get revisited because who is the person who is probably your manager's favorite player on the roster since last Thursday? It has a problem.
I mean, I think it's a question. I think that the leadership aspects that people are talking about with Bregman is the kind of um, the introductory press conference. I don't know if it was a press conference or the introduction media session
Mhm.
that Bregman had. I think was that today or was it yesterday? I don't know, but like,
Yesterday?
yeah,
Yesterday.
yesterday he mentioned like winning like three times within the first like 30 seconds. Just like
Mhm.
I'm a winning player. I've been in the postseason the past 8 seasons. Like I didn't come here to not play in the postseason. Like, you know, this is an organization that's used to winning. Like we should be winning, kind of thing. It was like it sounded comical in the way
He
that he
said it so much it
said it.
started to sound weird.
Yeah, but like he wasn't being funny. Like that's just like
No.
his attitude. And so I think that like having that attitude is probably a good thing because we don't have many players that have actually played in the playoffs, like as
Uh,
weird as it is that the Red Sox, haven't had like a super long playoff drought or even a super long World Series title drought. Like
mhm.
Devers is really like the only guy that has.
Duran was on the roster in 21,
Yeah.
and that's it.
I'm trying to like think of like the back end of the like a bullpen, or there any bullpen arms?
Chapman has
Well, yeah, I mean,
experience, but not with the Sox.
right, exactly. I mean, Chapman and Buehler
Yeah.
are also the two kind of like big guys that they kind of got that have that postseason experience, but it's just not the, there was no position player that had the postseason experience really. And I heard some stat that like Bregman has played 99 postseason games in his career. And it's just like, that is so far beyond anything that any of the Red Sox, I think the entire rest of the Red Sox roster added up hasn't played, especially position players. They haven't played anywhere close to that. So, I mean, it's just like having a guy like that in there to bring a culture of winning and be able to talk about winning, I think does have an effect. But I also think that he is new to the organization and new to the team. So I'm hoping that it's not like come in here and criticize, Casas for meditating or something kind of thing.
Right.
Or at least
they welcomed in Justin Turner with open arms, and he stepped into that leadership role really, really quickly in his one season here in Boston. I will say that I do think that Bregman's attitude and like approach to the game will be very beneficial for players like Jarren Duran. I think Duran will flock to Bregman. It is probably, my guess is already started, because Duran is very much a baseball first kind of guy, and I think that if Pedroia had been on the coaching staff, we maybe wouldn't have seen such a terrible year 2 seasons ago from Jarren, because he needs that. No, you're going to settle down and you're going to play baseball and we're going to win baseball games. And I think that Bregman does offer that to him as a very like solid rock and like hey, I'm slumping. What am I doing wrong with my swing? Kind of thing. He becomes an approachable veteran at the cage during, drills, anything like that.
Yeah, the JD Martinez, Justin Turner mold.
Which is the main reason I wanted JD back, was just to help fix swings. I would love if the Red Sox would turn him into a player coach.
I was gonna say, player coach. Like, let's bring it back.
And just let him just watch his iPad all game.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's the kind of leadership that, that we're looking at from Bregman. I don't necessarily think that I'm hoping.
That's my hope, yeah.
That it's one of those things that like winning cures all, because it was definitely a Casas is here and we're not exactly performing well kind of thing, which I think like leads to a little bit more complaints of like, you're getting grounded before a game and it's like, we're not winning. Why aren't you watching film or something before a game instead of like meditating? So I think that, if the Red Sox are winning, hopefully those kind of complaints don't come out, under the mysterious guise of veterans are saying.
Right.
But, that's another thing where I'm like, is there any doubt that was Chris Sale that was upset about it?
Didn't it come out that it was JD too?
Yeah, I was going to say it was JD. Like, I think it was him. And just Casas.
Maybe Carabas said something about that because they're boys.
Yeah. So the situation with JD, with this scenario, JD, he was there for 4 years with the team, and Casas was just coming up. Whereas Bregman is the new guy in the clubhouse, and Casas has been there for a little longer, but still, I mean, Bregman has 2 World Series rings and a lot more experience than Casas.
But I mean, you just wrote about Casas, right?
I did, and also going back to the trading him, I don't think teams are that high on him because of his swing. So, I mean, the team could try to move him again, but I don't think other teams will pick up the phone for him.
Not right now. If he has a breakout season, Sure, at
which
the
I'm
trade
hoping he
deadline.
does.
Oh, absolutely. I'm hoping he does and that the Red Sox sign him to an extension is what I want to happen. But
I mean, I think that, everyone that we've talked about the Red Sox possibly trading, uh, I don't know how much it moves the needle for other teams,
I think
like,
Willier's about the only one that does
yeah,
because you're willing
Willier
to
probably a little,
entertain a Gold Glove right fielder, but he still
yeah,
hits the platoon.
I was gonna say exactly, but he's seen as a platoon player largely. So I don't know if I think you would have to package someone more substantial with them,
Mhm.
or you'd have to end up moving.
Well, if you're on Twitter, that substantial move is one Rafael Devers after today. It,
I mean, you knew it was coming.
oh,
It was,
absolutely.
you know,
It,
but
and if that's you and you're listening to this, thanks for listening, but get educated.
I mean,
Hey,
it's
I
go
heard the Yankees need a third baseman.
well.
We'll trade Aaron Judge. Come on down.
I mean,
I mean, there's the picture from high school in the Red Sox shirt.
I I like that. I like the image of there's a picture of him from high school in a Red Sox shirt, because that's like a Red Sox trope for every player the Red Sox ever signed is remember
You
Jason
grew up a Red
Bay.
Sox fan.
They were like Jason Bay growing up in Canada as a Red Sox fan. It's and then he gets traded to, and then he goes to the Mariners for a short time, and they were like Mariners were the closest team to him growing up as a Mariners fan. And I'm just like, okay, so every organization just puts these little spins
Mhm.
on things. But
Yep.
I don't know. I think that as far as trading goes, yeah, I think Willier is probably number one. And then what do I know there was a lot of talk about Crawford. You had brought up a couple of times about how, Crawford might be a trade piece. What do we make of the quote unquote injury now to Crawford and to Bayo? Are these things we should be concerned about?
So I actually just wrote about the Crawford one.
Mhm.
Um, so it's hard to say. Like these leg injuries are so wonky, and it gives an explanation for why his stuff was a tick or two down last season, and probably why he got just absolute. He gave up absolute nukes
Yeah, what did he
in the
say?
second half of the
He
season.
said he got it
Third game, his third start of
third.
the
Yeah, I
season.
was gonna say it was second or third game. I was like, how? What?
He was covering first, and when he planted on the bag, he said something just didn't feel right with his
Yeah.
right leg, and he dealt with it all season. Um, and as a pitcher, if you can't push off with your right leg, you're going to lose velocity and control, and so uh, before this, I thought that Cutter could be a trade piece. I think that if they are seriously considering trading for Dylan Cease, that Cutter almost has to be involved in that. Because I don't think that they're trading Bayo. I hope they don't. Um, but I think that Cutter almost has to be a pitcher going back because otherwise you now have 7 starters. And I don't see them. Cutter, I think right now is headed to the bullpen no matter what. And do you push Bayo to your 5 and possibly into the bullpen? And then you've got Sandoval potentially coming back after the All-Star break. So, once again, you're incredibly deep, but there's a lot of what ifs with the bottom half of the rotation, the bottom 3, I guess.
So wait, so you think Bayo is our number starter right now?
So you cut out. What'd you say?
You think that Bayo's our number 5 starter right now?
No, 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 no. But I'm saying that if you bring in Cease and don't trade Cutter as part of it, everybody shifts down.
Right. Okay.
Because I think that Cease would have to slide in as your number 1. Even Crochet becomes the number 2 at that point.
I'm not sure about
At least for the 25 season.
Yeah, I think the way that people are predicting as, Crochet as like
I mean, if you have a 1A, 1B
yeah,
situation with Cease and Crochet, sure.
yeah, I mean, that's great. Um, what the cease, the idea of having a cease trade, does it bother you at all that we are essentially just reforming the White Sox from like 3 years ago? Like not
No.
a great team to be trying to reassemble, but like
No, but they did
Hendricks,
have a
Cease,
decent
and
pitching
Giolito.
staff.
Yeah, they had a good pitching staff at one
They just
point.
couldn't score
Like,
runs.
yeah, kinda like the Pirates back, like, 10 years ago. They had,
Mhm.
what, Cole or Garrett Cole. Um, they've had the Pirates have developed a lot of good pitchers, but they just haven't been
They
able
just do
to
what the
unlock
Pirates
their full
always do and
potential.
Yeah,
sell them for pieces.
yeah, yeah, I can see it. I mean, and the Pirates once again have a great
The
pitching
hope
staff.
is that Paul Skeens hits free agency here in a few years.
Yeah, so I mean, they have a great pitching staff, but we'll see if they win games or not.
I would
Again,
still love to take Jared Jones off their hands, but I don't know how that deal makes sense.
yeah, I was gonna say you were really banging the drum for that earlier, but I mean, the Red Sox have made a fair amount of moves since we uh, entertained that notion. So
I would be fine if they didn't trade for Cease. Like I'm not like all in on the Cease train. I do think that Suarez is interesting. It solves the bullpen problem. It puts a legitimate closer in that spot because while Hendricks is a feel good story, and I hope that he does well, counting on him to step into a closer role for a contending, hopefully, major league rotation is a tough sell for a lot of people. Um, Chapman, I don't trust to close ball games anymore, and neither did the Pirates. Um, Whitlock, I think, could serve as a closer, especially with Bregman behind him, because that does solidify your infield defense. I think that the best move is Justin Slayton in house. I would love to see Slayton take over that closer role. I think that he has the stuff for it. Guerrero, I think, also could be in that conversation by the end of the season. Because his fastball is nasty. And if that's what you're looking for in a closer, which most people are, but I think that if you could trade for a Suarez, I think that solves all of your problems. And while you need to shuffle the sixth, seventh, and eighth innings around a little bit, it's far easier to do when you have a guy that you are comfortable handing the ball to in a one-run game. And as it stands right now, I don't know that we have that in the Red Sox bullpen.
yeah, I mean, what do you think? Do you think that the Red Sox are actually like looking for someone as experienced as Suarez, or is it more likely that they're going to add some smaller piece, either a free agent or some minor trade for someone?
Is Robertson really the only name left on the relief pitcher free agent market?
I mean, he's the only one left that like I would
You would
think
entertain,
leaving.
yeah. He's semi-local. He lives in New England.
Mhm.
So I would not hate signing Robertson. I don't know if I would sign him as the closer. But he at least gives you another veteran presence that knows where his pitches are going, which is more than I can say for Aroldis Chapman.
Yeah. Do you get the feeling though that the Red Sox think that they need to go out and get a closer?
Yes.
I get the impression
Yeah.
that they're pretty okay with Hendricks being the closer, at least at the beginning of the season, kind of thing.
I think that we were real close on Tanner Scott until the Dodgers swooped in. And that to me signals that they don't trust, as of right now, anybody in the bullpen to actually close a game. Because I think everything that was coming out it was between the Red Sox and the Cubs. So very similar to the Alex Bregman situation. And then the Dodgers swooped in with an offer for a little more money and likely a chance to win a World Series ring during the life of that contract. And so he took that.
as did Kirby Yates. And
I thought the Yates thing was crazy.
yeah,
I get it. You're ring chasing at this point, but man, you're going to go and be an opener out there.
Yeah, that was like really funny because like everyone was like, oh, now that, it was like, it seemed like the Dodgers were in on Yates and then they got Tanner Scott. And so it was like, oh, and where does this leave Yates now? Then it's like, oh, it actually
Also
still
with the Dodgers.
leaves Yates with the Dodgers. And somehow they have like a 30th roster spot or something that they're going to put him on. Like, it really doesn't make any sense. I mean, I don't listen to any Dodgers podcasts, but I assume the Dodgers podcasts sound a lot like how we sound talking about like, well, where do you play all these guys? Because they also have like a glut of starting pitchers right now that are, you could probably do at least a 7-man rotation with all the guys that they have. And that, is not including like Kershaw, who's going to start the season on the IL, but did resign.
Come back in June. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of thing. Like it is sort of ridiculous how many people they have. But it's been a good problem for them. So hopefully it'll be a good problem for us as well.
I've said since the Heim Bloom era that, people wanted to call us the Rays of the Northeast. Like, no, the pattern's the Dodgers. That is what Heim was trying to do. He did it unsuccessfully. He built up the farm system, which is, Heim was brought in to trade Mookie. That he was the fall guy. That's why he was here. But in the process, he did build up the farm system and netted us Wilyer Abreu for Christian Vasquez. And I think that Craig's mentality, and Maddie, you wrote about this, I think is closer to the Braves, but he's got to get the front office to hand out those extensions, and the Bayo extension and the Rafael extension, that's a step in the right direction. I think at least with the Rafael extension, it's maybe misplaced slightly. But I think that the Bayo extension, should he continue to build on the second half of last season, that's going to look like maybe the pitching steal is that extension that Bayo has.
So who are you looking for them to extend, like in the short term? Obviously, we talked about Crochet, but are there other players that you are?
I don't think Casas is a possibility anymore. I think
we're not going to do like a sign and trade like it's the NBA or something
for Chris Paul, and then David Stern can come and veto the trade. But I would love for it to be Casas, but I think that realistically he's going to go through the arbitration process and probably try to bet on himself at this point. Although he appears to be the star of the Netflix series, so maybe he's going to pivot to Hollywood.
I mean, was there ever a doubt that he was going to be the star of the Netflix series?
No, absolutely not.
No,
but now it's just confirmed.
Like when he first got injured and it looked like it was going to take a while for him to get back, I thought like, well, maybe he won't be in it that much. But once it was apparent that he's still hanging around the team, it's like, oh no, he has even more time to be on camera.
Right. Now he's doing what he really loves, entertaining. Yeah. I think realistically you have to look at Campbell or Anthony are the next two up for an extension, and both of them are open to it, as what they said at Fenway Fest. I think Campbell was a little more readily a yes than Anthony, and Anthony was more like, oh, I would let my agent handle that. Like, but if they want to talk, I'll talk kind of deal. Whereas Campbell, they were like, hey, would you sign an extension right now? He's like, you got it? Like, I've got pins. Like,
so it's a lot of players. So it's the players that haven't debuted yet. There's no one.
I mean, I wouldn't give it to Wong. I
wouldn't give one to Duran.
No. And I get massacred every time this comes up, but I'd trade him today. You've got to strike while the iron's hot, because expecting him to repeat the 24 season is not nuts, but it's highly unlikely. And I think that this deal that they've agreed to, I wrote about it and we talked about it on the last episode. I think that it makes him infinitely more tradable. Because I don't think that they want to deal with him in 3 years going back into the arbitration process. And if I were him, I would not want to be part of the arbitration process as a 30-year-old, 31-year-old.
Yeah.
So am I saying he's going to get traded during spring training? No. If the Sox somehow are falling apart by the trade deadline, I think he's as good as gone. But I think that next offseason, he's the piece that's moved to make room for Roman Anthony. Especially if he has a good year.
Yeah, I think that there's a chance that he does, if not repeat what he did this past season, he comes close, because there's going to be
Yeah,
a
I think so.
offensive cover for him. Just
Yeah.
with Bregman, I mean, Duran was our main offensive weapon for so much of the season that I think that people game planned more around him than they did probably even Devers. So I think there's a chance that now that they have to game plan around Bregman as well, I think there's a chance
Casas coming back, that helps.
I think that there's a chance that Duran has a very good season. Will he get MVP votes? I'm not sure, but
no, I 100% agree with you. I think that Bregman will, or not Bregman, I think that Duran will have a very good season. And I think that it makes him infinitely more tradable. And yes, he was the shining star of the 24 Sox and all-star MVP, and garnered some MVP votes at the end of the year. And that's great. And I like Jaron through just like casually like chatting between innings at Busch Stadium last year. He was a very nice guy. But I don't think that he's long for Boston. And I think that if you can get a team like the Mariners to overpay for offense, which is what they tried to do with Casas, I think that if you swap Duran into that conversation, I don't think that Bryce Miller is off the table at that point.
I think that the Mariners, like, they have typically been a team that has done so many moves every offseason, just like the most like minor upgrade kind of trades, that the fact that they haven't really done that much this offseason has been like truly shocking.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to make of that as far as, them not biting on Casas. Because originally I thought that it had something that it was more about how teams weren't valuing Casas the way that the Red Sox were. But the more the offseason has gone on and the more the Mariners haven't done, the more I think like maybe it's just the Mariners were not interested in doing business.
Because if you're offering Casas for Luis Castillo, you don't even ask if you heard correctly. You just say yes.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe they think, Luis Castillo is going to have a monster season or something, but and more likely it seems that they just were not prepared to even, look at offers.
Keith Law ranked the Mariners farm system as the number 1 in baseball. The Red Sox were second. So, I mean, maybe they're really high on their internal development, so they don't feel the need to trade for any or seek any outside help.
I always call the Mariners my like B team. They're like Red Sox are my number 1, but I've always, ever since Griffey, I've been a Mariners fan. And so I don't listen to any like Mariners podcast or anything like that, but I do wonder, are they just so incredibly high on that farm system that they're just like, nope, we're good, which is kind of where we were at heading into the 24 season. It's like we got all these kids, and then really at the time it was Marcelo, Roman, and Nick York. And then Campbell forced his way into the conversation, and Nick York turned into Quinn Priester.
Who's another interesting name that we really haven't talked that much on this podcast about, but like is a young starting pitcher who, what are we going to do with him exactly?
I think he's got a pretty high ceiling.
Yeah.
I think that if push comes to shove, you protect him or don't trade him. I would trade Richard Fitz before I'd trade Priester. which here in Missouri, that was the name that was pretty seriously tossed about in the Arenado trade was Richard Fitts and Blaze Jordan. I know Jordan got some national attention, but it seemed like outside of Missouri, you didn't hear much about Fitts. But through my connections with the baseball team here, I kind of asked around a little bit, and they're like, yeah, Richard Fitts is a name that keeps coming up in these Arenado talks. And I was relieved to hear that over Priester. I think that Fitz has a higher floor, but Priester has a higher ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he will probably be a Cooper Criswell type, where we'll see him for extended stretches when starters inevitably go down. It would not shock me if he leapfrogs Criswell in the AAA depths.
Mm-hmm.
Priester, I think, should be probably the number one starter by the end of the season for Worcester.
Yeah.
I still want to say Pawtucket.
My favorite part about living in Dallas is there is definitely a guy who lives somewhere kind of near me, and I see his truck parked occasionally, and his license plate is Paw Sox. I'm like, you're deep. That's
yeah,
that's a deep cut license plate for Texas. To know the Paw Sox, so I'm always tempted to leave him a note or something listen to our podcast. Really know what's going on.
It's not a parking ticket.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that Priester, at least he had the the prospect pedigree that you would expect him to be better than Fitz and Criswell. I know he hasn't panned out to that point yet, which is why he wasn't, traded for. But I think
the fact that he was traded straight up for somebody ranked as highly as Nick York, I think speaks to still even how the Pirates valued him.
Yeah, I think it was a
because you don't ever see straight up 1-for-1 trades anymore.
Right. Especially of prospects like that. It's sort of like a, I think it was just two guys that are highly touted prospects, but didn't necessarily have a major league place and maybe weren't developing quite the way that they thought. And it's kind of well, let's see if you can do better.
Yeah. Had the Pirates not had Skeens and Jones, Priester is probably part of their opening rotation.
Yeah, definitely. So I think
when it became clear that York was going to be leapfrogged by Campbell, he became incredibly expendable.
Yeah, we've talked about how hard playing time seems to be for everybody. All of these prospects that are, knocking on the door. But yeah, he seemed to be the one who, he was
by far the odd man out. Yeah,
even with Myers not playing hardly at all last season, it didn't seem like that was going to add up to York somehow playing more. So feel bad for him, but with the way that the Pirates offense performed this past season, I would say there's a good chance that he will see some major league playing time. So that's good for his development at least. Is there anything else you guys wanted to cover this episode?
I think we've kind of checked all the boxes. Do you guys have any articles coming out?
So I don't have an article coming out, but I did in the most inopportune time just before the Bregman trade. I had an article about the Red Sox promotional giveaways, which was sort of inspired by another podcast, Effectively Wild, did a little thing about all of the bobbleheads that the Dodgers were giving away this season. I think the Dodgers are giving away a total of 21 different bobbleheads during the season. And they had kind of asked, we don't actually know if this is weird or not, but it seems like a lot. And I was like, I wonder if it is weird. So I thought I would look at the Red Sox giveaway schedule. And it turns out the Red Sox have the second fewest giveaways in the league. They are just ahead of the Marlins, who have 0 giveaways. So the Red Sox have 8 currently on the schedule. I don't know. Maybe there's a Bregman bobblehead in the future now that they got him. So maybe.
Yeah.
But it was kind of shocking to see because obviously the Red Sox were like the first team I looked up after I heard the Dodgers thing, and I was like, 8. I was like, that seems light, but I don't know. Maybe it's not. And then as I looked at other teams, I was like, oh, I didn't realize how light, but it's like, it's bad. But again, I mean, so I did that article, and I know it got promoted as like the Red Sox announced the promotional schedule, which is, true. It does have all the dates for if you do want one of the 2 bobbleheads that the Red Sox are giving away, you could find it on there. But yeah, I got a little bit deeper into it by looking at literally every single MLB team's promotional giveaway schedule, and was surprised at the results, definitely. What about you, Maddie? You working on anything?
Yeah, I'm kind of working on a longer piece about baseball as a form of diplomacy with international relations with Japan.
Okay.
That sounds
Very
awesome.
nice. I have been enjoying your articles because they are I think you take an approach kind of similar to me, where it's not necessarily like the breaking news type of articles. It's more just like, I'm interested. I have this question. I would like to find out the answer. I wonder if I could write the answer, kind of thing, And so I've read a couple of your recent articles, and I've been enjoying them. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Alex writes
Alex?
for me to keep up with them.
Yeah, it's new stuff like every other day.
You just find time occasionally, but I do live in the kind of breaking news and stat analysis kind of thing. I just had the kind of make or break season Cutter Crawford article go up today. Today. And then Davey and I have been working on a piece on Brendan Bernardino, kind of analyzing what went wrong in 2024 and if there's an explanation for it. And then I'm kind of slow burning a piece on the jerseys for this year in hopes that we get the new City Connect announcement pretty soon. I would hope that would break sometime during spring training, but I don't remember when they debuted the yellow ones, like when they announced it. I probably need to look that up. So, like I said, I'm like real slow burning it.
It has been. I mean, it's hard to remember because it was so long ago that they debuted those the yellow ones. Like I'm pretty sure
there was
one of the first teams.
Were we the first team?
I think we were.
I think we were the first team,
and we're definitely
we're the first one to get 2.
We're like the only team though that's still wearing like their very first design, right?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
Was
I know
it,
San Diego just announced that this is their last year with whatever theirs is, but I think that I think theirs is still even newer than ours. Like, so we've just
I think so.
We've been just wearing those into the ground. So,
and I love the yellow jerseys. I've loved them since they were announced. But I think it was Duran posted the picture of his belts for this year, and there was a green one that had yellow accents. And so people are assuming that that's going to be the City Connect colors, but I guess for occasional home games, we will be the Boston A's, if that's the case.
Well, I mean, that was the big complaint when the first City Connects came out, was that everyone was like, what are we, UCLA?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you get away from that when you're wearing City Connects.
No.
You know, it's always going
No.
to be someone else's color scheme. So
I've heard that the yellow might be for the pesky pole and that it's just like an accent color because the green on his belt is 100% monster green.
okay, that's kind of nice.
Yeah, I think that that's a cool idea.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a cool article whenever that is. I know you said slow burning, so maybe we'll be expecting it soon, but sounds cool. And Maddie, your Japanese diplomacy one definitely sounds cool. So
yeah, I can't wait for that. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Otherwise, I guess, everyone reported today. So it's we're going to be
Baseball's
doing
back.
this. We're going to be doing this even more often, even though this was by far the shortest time in between two podcasts we've had so far. So, maybe we once again won't take 2 weeks. We'll see what happens.
Maybe an emergency podcast for a Dylan Cease trade.
Yep. Sign me up. Let's do it.
Fingers crossed, I guess.
Or Vladimir Guerrero. But I just had to get it in this episode. But
we're not tagging him.
That's fine. I will.
If you're listening, we're not tagging Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Don't do it.
I'll tweet at him. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Please, rate us, subscribe, follow along. We're on episode 5, and with the season coming up, like Adam said, we're going to keep it going, and there'll be, less time in between episodes. So we hope you enjoy it. We look forward to reading your comments and interacting with you guys. So thanks. See you on the next episode of the Talk Sox podcast.